They said I was a mistake, like I didn't deserve to exist. If you've ever felt invisible to the people who should have loved you most, then please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. Because this story isn't just mine, it's for anyone who's ever been told they're not enough. My name is Rose. I grew up in a small town where cracked sidewalks and faded paint told stories of forgotten dreams. Our house? It wasn't a home. It was a cage filled with cold silences and biting words disguised as care. My parents? They were caught in their own struggles, and I was the unintended casualty. My mother's voice still echoes in my mind, sharp and unforgiving. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" It wasn't a question, it was a verdict. My father's silence spoke louder than words, a daily reminder that I was the failure, the disappointment. From as far back as I can remember, I learned that my worth was measured by how little I disrupted their fragile world. I was the shadow in the background, the mistake they wished to erase. School was no refuge. Bullied, overlooked, I wore loneliness like a second skin. The laughter in the halls was never for me. I remember sitting by the window during recess, watching other kids play, feeling trapped behind invisible bars. One night, I lay awake, heart pounding, tears blurring my vision as I stared at the cracked ceiling. My chest tightened with every memory, every whispered insult, every sideways glance. My hands trembled, clutching the sheets as if holding on to the last thread of myself. I wanted to disappear, to stop fighting a battle I felt was already lost. But deep inside, beneath layers of doubt and pain, a stubborn flame flickered. It wasn't rage, it wasn't bitterness. It was a quiet hope whispering, "Maybe I'm more than they say. Maybe I can rewrite this story." Then came the night everything changed. It started with that same question, thrown like a dagger during a family dinner. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" The words cut through the air, sharp and cold, and I felt my breath catch. The room went silent. My heart hammered so loud I thought everyone could hear. I felt the walls close in, my hands clenching into fists under the table. For a moment, the girl who had been silent for so long wanted to scream, to fight, to break free. How do you fight a war when the enemy is your own family? When those meant to protect you become the ones who hurt you most? That question haunted me like a ghost. And what happened next? It would shatter everything I thought I knew, and I never saw it coming. If you think this is just another story of pain, wait until you hear how I turned it all around. The words my mother spoke that night still cut through me like a jagged blade. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Those words weren't just a comparison, they were a verdict, a condemnation that echoed through every corner of my life. Growing up, I was always the shadow, the forgotten one, the girl who couldn't live up to anyone's expectations. My sister had it all, the perfect grades, the effortless charm, the smile that lit up every room. And everywhere I went, the comparison followed me like a relentless storm. At home, it was impossible to escape. My mother's eyes never softened when she looked at me, only sharp disappointment. "You'll never be what she is," she'd say. My father's cold silence was even more painful, a constant reminder that I was the family's failure. One particular evening, I came home bruised, both physically and emotionally, after another terrible day at school. Instead of comfort, I was met with a dismissive shrug. "Stop being so clumsy. Your sister never comes home with scrapes like that." The words stabbed at my heart, but I swallowed the pain, forcing a smile I didn't feel. School wasn't any kinder. Teachers labeled me lazy and distracted, ignoring the nights I stayed up studying alone. The other kids whispered behind my back, mocking my every move. I felt invisible, like a ghost walking among the living. The loneliness was suffocating. There were days I wished I could disappear completely. I hid my tears behind locked doors and smiled through the pain, pretending I was okay even when I wasn't. The weight of neglect and disappointment pressed down so hard I could barely breathe. But the worst moments were at the dinner table, where my family's coldness was on full display, the comparisons, the dismissals, the endless criticisms piled on top of each other. My sister, praised endlessly, seemed like a different world. I was the mistake, the one no one wanted to see. One night, during one of those dinners, my mother's words were like a final blow. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" The room fell silent. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might burst. My hands clenched the table, nails digging into my palms. For the first time, something inside me snapped. The girl who had suffered in silence felt a fierce spark of rebellion ignite. I didn't want to be the shadow anymore. I wanted to be seen, to be heard, to be anything other than a disappointment. But how do you fight when the ones who should protect you are the very people tearing you down? That night, I made a choice. I knew I couldn't stay in a place where I was nothing more than an afterthought. I didn't know where I'd go or how I'd survive, but I knew I had to leave behind the pain, the comparisons, and the coldness that threatened to consume me. Leaving wasn't just running away. It was the first step toward reclaiming my life. And just like that, my old world began to crumble, and a new, uncertain chapter awaited. Leaving everything behind was terrifying. The city that once seemed full of promise quickly revealed itself as cold, harsh, and indifferent. My first night alone, I curled up on a rough park bench, the chill seeping through my thin jacket. The sounds of distant sirens, murmurs of passers-by, and the flickering street lamps created an eerie backdrop to my loneliness. Hunger gnawed at me relentlessly. Every growl from my stomach was a painful reminder of how unprepared I was. I wandered the streets, searching for scraps of food or shelter, learning the hard way how invisible a desperate girl could become. The kindness of strangers was rare, and the judgmental stares felt like daggers. I often found myself sitting in dark corners, head bowed, fighting back tears. The memories of home haunted me's cold silences, the sharp words, the crushing comparisons. I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake leaving. The world outside was no kinder than the one I'd escaped. But amid the darkness, there were sparks of hope. One rainy afternoon, as I tried to shield myself from the downpour under a shaky awning, I met Maya. Her smile was warm, genuine, stark contrast to the world I knew. Maya was a volunteer at a small community center, a place offering shelter and help to those like me. With her guidance, I found a temporary roof over my head and a group of people who didn't judge me by my past or my mistakes. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was seen. I wasn't just a burden or a failure, I was a person. Work was grueling. I took whatever jobs I could, cleaning floors, washing dishes, running errands, anything to earn enough for a meal or a bus ticket. Every paycheck, no matter how small, was a triumph. Each step forward chipped away at the fear and self-doubt that had long gripped me. Maya encouraged me to take a night class on computer skills. "You're capable of so much more than you think," she said softly. "It's never too late to start over." For the first time, I dared to dream again. The nights in the shelter were cramped and noisy, but as I lay there looking out at the city lights, they seemed to shine just from a distant but promising. I realized the path ahead would be difficult, full of uncertainty and struggle, but it was mine to walk. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was beginning to live. The girl who once hid in shadows was slowly finding her light. Years had passed since I walked away from the suffocating walls of that house, the place that tried to break me. Back then, I was just a scared girl, swallowed by shadows and silence. But now, I was someone else entirely. A woman forged through fire, carrying scars but stronger than ever. The moment I decided to return, I knew it wouldn't be easy. I wasn't coming back for forgiveness or reconciliation. I came to claim my voice, to stand tall and demand the respect I deserved. Walking through the front door felt surreal. The house smelled the same faintly of stale air and lost hopes, but I didn't feel small anymore. I felt a storm gathering inside me, ready to break free. My mother was the first to notice. Her eyes flickered with disbelief before narrowing into cold suspicion. "Rose, is that really you?" she asked, voice trembling as if unsure whether to welcome or reject me. My father's face was unreadable, but his silence was deafening. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. I didn't waste a moment. "I'm back," I said, voice steady, every word carrying years of hurt, strength, and determination. The confrontation was brutal. I recounted every cold night, every harsh word, every moment of being unseen. The years of neglect weren't just stories anymore, they were truths I demanded they face. My mother's composure crumbled. Tears welled up in her eyes, but there was no remorse, only defensiveness. "We did what we thought was best," she snapped, trying to mask the shame. My father shifted uncomfortably. "You don't understand what we went through," he said quietly, but his voice lacked conviction. "You never tried to understand me," I replied, voice rising. "You chose silence over support, judgment over love." Their faces flushed with a mix of guilt and anger. For the first time, I saw fear that the girl they had written off had grown into a force they couldn't control. I wasn't there to destroy them, but to hold them accountable. Power wasn't in revenge, but in reclaiming my story. As the storm settled, I thought the battle was over, but life had one more blow waiting. From the shadows, a letter slid onto the table, yellowed with a familiar handwriting that stopped me cold. It was from my sister. The letter revealed secrets I never imagined, hidden betrayals, lies that tore through the family's facade. What I thought I knew was only a fragment of the truth. The real war wasn't just with my parents. It was deeper, darker, and far more complicated. And now, the game had changed. The letter from my sister wasn't just a revelation, it was a key that unlocked years of buried pain, confusion, and unanswered questions. For the first time, I saw the fractured pieces of my family's story, the secrets hidden behind closed doors, the betrayals that cut deeper than I ever imagined. But understanding didn't mean forgiveness was automatic. I realized forgiveness was something I had to give myself, not to erase the past, but to free my future. Holding on to anger and resentment would only keep me chained to a life I no longer wanted. When I faced my parents again, I was no longer the frightened, broken girl who had once fled. I was a woman who had wrestled with darkness, who had been shattered and rebuilt stronger. Looking them in the eyes, I said with quiet strength, "I am done living in the shadows of your expectations. I am done trying to be someone I'm not." The silence that followed was heavy, thick, with everything we never dared to say aloud. I saw tears in my mother's eyes, but no apology. My father's usual coldness cracked, just for a moment, revealing a flicker of something I didn't recognize, maybe regret, maybe guilt. But I didn't need their forgiveness to define who I was. I chose to break the cycle. I forgave them, not for their sake, but for mine. Forgiveness became my liberation, my shield against the past that threatened to consume me, and I cut the ties that bound me to toxicity, making space for healing, for growth, and for hope. This journey taught me a truth so simple, yet so powerful. We are not defined by the way others see us, but by the courage we summon to define ourselves. If you've ever felt invisible, unheard, or unworthy, please know this. Your story belongs to you alone. No one else holds that pen. So I ask you, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you stay trapped in the pain of the past? Or would you rise, reclaim your life, and write a new chapter? If my story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with those who need to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of pain, courage, and triumph. Your support means the world. Together we rise. Thank you for listening and believing in the power of second chances.